Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy C. Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Marty Van Ravensway, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3. J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Pastor Robert Baxter from High Point Church in Arlington. Following the invocation, everybody will please remain standing for our pledges.
Let's all bow our hearts and heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the life you've given us this day. May we all be considerate and carried as we walk through the gift of this day. Father, thank you for this honorable court. May you give wisdom to Judge Whitley and all that serve him, and all those who are on today's agenda. I ask that everything that is said and done today in this court give honor and glory to you, our ultimate judge. Father, may we walk through this life with humility, love, hearts of repentance as we recognize our need for you in every facet of life. Bless this country, bless this county. I pray all these in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to these Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baxter. Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the court. We have a few announcements on the agenda this morning. The first deals with purchasing. Item J1, it concerns the sale of recycled paper. There is a new court communication in your red folder this morning as it relates to that. Also, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about next week's court. I'd like for you to look at your calendars. What we would like to do next week is to have a work session after closed. It should take about an hour or so after close, so please calendarize that. We should be out of court by about 3 o'clock that day. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. This past weekend, really, we've lost 2 former county employees, and as we close today, I hope it will close in honor of Judge Howard Fender and Judge Pete Gilfeather. Judge Fender had been a DA, I guess a Chief Justice for the Court of Appeals, as well as a felony and misdemeanor court. County court at law. And then Judge Gilfeather had been a county court at law judge for many years. And so it was not a good weekend for county as county employees. So today we'll close in honor of those 2 gentlemen as we go forward. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our January 22nd meeting.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Brooks, you have a proclamation.
I do indeed, Your Honor. This recognizes the 100th anniversary of the founding of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and the founding of one of its Metroplex chapters. It's for ratification only. I gave y'all a little crash course in Black Greek organizations last week. For whoever's keeping score, this is the second oldest. The oldest is actually Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, to which I belong. But I move ratification nevertheless.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. You have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have one additional item for the court this morning. On item A1 under the Administrator section, we're requesting that the court approve FY08 professional services contracts with the following entities: Alliance for Children, Challenge, MHMR of Tarrant County Youth Recovery Campus, and the Women's Center of Tarrant County Rape Crisis Center.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ray, are you ready for your item now, or do you want after close? Elections. Mr. Rayford. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
A while back, the two parties asked me to look into the feasibility of providing paper ballots during early voting at regional sites, maybe 5 or 6 sites, or 5 or 6 of our early voting sites. I looked at that. I looked at the possibility of doing that 2 ways. One would be the sort of old-fashioned way that we used to do it, where we stock pre-printed ballots at each one of those sites. And also looked at the possibility of doing a ballot-on-demand situation using our Ballot Now system, much like we print ballots in our office for the daily, the ones that we're going to send out in the mail. Unfortunately, the Secretary of State's office says that we cannot use the ballot-on-demand system at a polling place situation in person. So even though that seems to be the more cost-effective route long-term, and it's the one that gives me the least heartburn from a logistical standpoint, the Secretary of State's office says that election law just doesn't provide for using that in a polling place situation. So that seems to be off the table. So I investigated the feasibility of providing paper ballots, pre-printed paper ballots at 6 early voting sites, much like we used to do before we had the e-slate system. My recommendation is that we not do that just because it's such a logistical difficulty for my department in getting the election ready, conducting the election. We have 638 voting precincts in Tarrant County and almost 895,000 registered voters. So 638 precincts, and we have a situation where any county voter can go to any county early voting site. So a voter from Azle can go to Arlington to vote early. A voter from Benbrook can go to Grapevine, and vice versa. And so it's really a logistical difficulty for my office to stage a ballot for every precinct at every one of these sites. Maintaining the inventory on a daily basis and monitoring that to see, where you're running low on ballots and shuttling new ballots out all over the county becomes a real nightmare for us. And I'm asking you just to keep the system that we have. We do have a certified system with the e-slate for early voting. We allow paper ballots on Election Day for those who want that option. We've had 935,000 votes cast on e-slate since we purchased that system in 2001. Sometime this year, we will go over that 1 million mark of voters who use the e-slate for early voting, and I think that's a pretty good vote of confidence from our voters for that system. I realize that there are some voters who are not comfortable with electronic voting systems, and for them, we do have the paper ballot option on Election Day.
We have 3 audience participation forms that I would like to give an opportunity to talk or to make their comments at this point in time. And then, Steve, if you would remain close by, in case there are any questions. First, I'll call on Art Brender. Art, come on forward, give your name and address, and you're welcome to make any comments. Did you find that hunting dog last week?
I did. I found him. It took him Friday. He was out for a pretty good while. And when I picked him up, I went to get him. A nice lady called, and I went there. And as soon as I got in there, he took off. He was wanting to go right out the door. And I told him I thought that was a little rude of him to leave in such a hurry since she'd found him like that. But she'd given him a bath. And I think, he knew he would be safe with me from that kind of torture. Yeah. I'm Art Brender. I live at 4121 Hampshire, Fort Worth, Texas, and I am the elected, for the last time, I might add, chair of the Tarrant County Democratic Party. Last time after serving this will be my 6th term. I'm serving my 6th term. Your Honor and members of the Commissioners Court, what we want to do is, we believe necessary for instilling confidence in the voters that has been shaken by a lot of things, not necessarily of our doing, but some of our doing, and that is electronic voting has created problems for all of us, and I think it's for both parties, although I'm just speaking for one. And I realize, and we've worked with Steve, and I think Steve's doing a good job. But once again, we disagree on this only in the sense that I think we all recognize the problem that we have with people who are concerned about electronic voting, and that is the only option that they have for early vote. And basically, that's about 40% of our voters. And what I hark back to is what could have been a disastrous situation for us. Which was, once again, just one of those mistakes that occurs. I know that sometimes there's a lot of conspiratorial theories out there about what's happened other places and so forth. I mean, we're looking at, I think in Florida, they've gone back, there's primary they're holding, I think today, if I'm not mistaken, is or this week at an event. They're holding it in many places, going back to regular paper ballots and counting them all night and all that sort of thing because they had so many votes disappear on their electronic machine. I'm not even concerned. It's a problem, but my concern is that just the sort of thing that happens, the kind of error that occurs and can occur innocently in programming any kind of computer is just not able to be caught the way we currently take care of our business on electronic voting machines right here in Tarrant County. We tried. I mean, we're still trying. As you know, as I said, and I compliment this Commissioner's Court on the selection of these devices because when we selected them, they had a paper audit trail that was available. We set money aside to retrofit the old machines we have and include this in the new ones, and then the Secretary of State has proven to be, for reasons that are not very clear, certainly not based on the technology or anything else, but they have been resistant to it. The legislature was somewhat resistant, I think, based on the fact that we had a bill to override what the Secretary of State had done. It failed in committee only because they claimed it was an unfunded mandate. And after we amended the bill, and I talked to representative from Tyler himself, even after it was amended, and he agreed it did not provide an unfunded mandate, but by that time we'd gotten late in the session and there was too much consternation, as we know, in this last legislative session to get it out, although I think maybe it would have. So here we are. I hark back to, and realize Steve wasn't here. The situation was handled very, very well, but we had an error in 2002 that had it been included on the DREs, in other words, it was just a programming error. I say just a programming error. I realize that's significant, but we had procedures in place to test for it, and it got by those as well. Nobody ignored their duty in the way those were programmed. Nobody ignored the testing. There wasn't like somebody dropped the ball on something. The problem is, despite that, they just overlooked the fact that when this thing was, when you voted a straight ticket, it didn't vote for anybody. It didn't on either party. If you voted a straight ticket, no vote was recorded. The good thing, if you want to say there was a good thing about it, is it was on the scanners and it wasn't on the DREs that we had for early vote. So we had all those ballots. We went back and we counted every single one of them. There wasn't a vote lost and all that. There was no, certainly there was no intent to do that. But we had the evidence there. We had the backup so that we didn't have a disaster. And that's the concern we have now with early vote. We've tried the other way, and I'm certainly not fussing at y'all. I'm praising you because I think you had the foresight to do what a lot of other commissioners' courts didn't do, and maybe it wouldn't have been an unfunded mandate problem because that money, as you know, was federal money, and it could have been set aside just like y'all did. But what I'd like to do is go forward from there, at least for now, not retrofit every location. We have, I think, Steve, is it 31 or 32 early vote locations? 31, let's just say 31 early vote locations. We have a couple locations where we go out for a couple of days at the schools and we move that location around. But anyway, that we want to do, and I think Steve had looked at 6 locations. In essence, what the proposal was that we made way back last year, I'm not sure exactly when, but early in the fall or maybe even before, we were talking about this, about doing a scanner site at 4 different locations around the county. We ultimately decided we could do 5, and I think Steve has actually accounted for 6 here, and that's fine because in trying to find locations, there were a couple locations that we're trying to find some additional ones to kind of take the pressure off a few, like Southwest Sub-Courthouse, which gets a tremendous amount of pressure. We've now got one other location out there. In looking at the 4 sites, I think Steve decided that a 5th site was necessary to kind of cover the county. But we wanted to do that for those 6 sites, including Premier Street. Excuse me. So the Secretary of State apparently has nixed what I was suggested before, which I think is really a good solution, and that is just to use the software that prints the ballots at the location. We don't have to have all the cabinets and everything else. We just print a ballot right there. The software accounts for it. It has a separate number for each ballot, so we can keep up with them the same way we keep up with the other ballots. But I realize, at least for this election, the primary election, that's not going to be approved by then. I think it's something we might look at for a general election, simply because Hart InterCivics, we do our dealing with, has that software, and I think this is what I mentioned, and I mentioned to GK last week, this $125,000 acquisition cost in the annual software licenses. We already pay that for the one location where we use it, and I would think that they should be amenable to allowing us to do that in other locations for much more nominal price than what they're charging here. I realize that's down the road. That's not for today. But for today, I would like to go with option 1. Of the numbers that you see there on Steve Rayburn's memo of January 23rd, the $75,000, of course, would be the cost that would be charged to the county. It would, to the parties. It would not come out of the county budget. We have to pay for the printing of the ballots, and that would come out of our budget. The other cost, because the state statute sets it up this way, why I do not know, but the other cost would have to be borne by the county. That is the cost of acquiring file cabinets and other paper items and so forth, which Steve has estimated at about $15,000. Now, once again, that's not a cost that's going to occur each election. That would be the initial startup cost. And then $30,000, I think, is what he has estimated for the 6 locations in additional labor costs. I'm not trying to run up the cost of your election. I'm not trying to bust anybody's budget, but I do think that by offering this early, there are so many people that want that early vote option now, that affording them a place, and I think that Premier Street, while it is a location, and certainly it's just hard to find, and it's for a lot of people, it's just not a familiar place to go. But I think if we had these, at least 4 other locations around the county, and 6 if that's what Steve feels like is needed, that's fine with me. It would give the voters that confidence that they need, so we don't have the kind of it's more than just the confidence that individual voter going. It's the fact that there's such a rough raise about it. I'm afraid it discourages other voters who just go, well, I hear they're not even going to count it. I don't know, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's like, look, on election day you got the option, but for early vote now you've got the option. So that's what we're asking the county to do that part of it. We'll do our share on the $75,000 if you do the $45,000. Judge, that's all I have. Unless you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Stephanie Click. Stephanie, come on forward and give us your name and address.
My name is Stephanie Click, and I live at 8450 Trace Ridge Parkway in Fort Worth, and I am the current chairman of the Tarrant County Republican Party. When initially we began discussing this, I was not adverse to it until I learned more about the logistics, what the cost might be, and what some of the other barriers to the Ballot Now program. As I understand it, the Secretary of State has ruled out that as a more cost-effective option in providing that to the voters. In Tarrant County, unlike Harris and Travis County, our voters do have an option to vote on a paper ballot. Harris County and Travis County vote exclusively electronically on Election Day and early. And in our county, we're fortunate. We have 2 systems. And a voter that is concerned about electronic voting has the option of voting close to home on a paper ballot rather than having to go to one of the 6 sites that are being proposed. I think that it will be much more convenient for the voters to vote on a paper ballot on Election Day. I think it's also, with having 6 sites that will have paper ballots, it's going to be very confusing for the voters. Which sites are in fact going to have a paper ballot and which are going to have an electronic ballot. I'm concerned that whether or not the Department of Justice would actually clear that, because you're treating voters differently at different sites during early voting. And so I have grave concerns about that. I'm also very concerned that implementing this so late in the process that we're going to have problems with the election. If you're looking at the voting turnout in other states, there's a great deal of interest in the presidential election this cycle. I read this morning in Florida alone, when they had a total of 1.43 million people vote last time in a presidential election, they've already had 1 million people vote early, and they may very well have 3 to 4 million people vote in their election, which is a significant increase. And I think that we too, because I do not believe the decision will be made as to which nominee either party is going to select as their nominee for president, will be made until after Texas and Ohio vote on March 4th. So I do think that we're likely to have very high turnout in our election. Implementing this so late in the process, I'm really concerned that the wheels are going to come off the train and we're going to have a problem with our election. I think that this needs to be, if it's going to be implemented at some point in time in the future, it needs to be carefully planned for and thought out. We have not provided paper ballots in our early voting locations for some time. Procedures need to be developed so that we have a fair and accurate election. And those procedures, have not been in place for a good many years. And those are all things that need to be considered before this is implemented. As I said again, the voters in Tarrant County have a choice already on Election Day. It's close to home. They do not have to travel to one of 6 sites in the county. They can vote in their own neighborhood on Election Day and receive a paper ballot. I'd like to remind the court, early voting begins on the 19th of February. That is just a short time away. And I'm concerned that if we were to implement this today, whether or not we would have a sufficient quantity of paper ballots available to do this. My understanding, our Election Day ballots sometimes takes 5 days to print. And we're talking about adding on to that. And, just from a logistical standpoint, I think this is a nightmare. And that we're not going to do our best work at implementing this so late in the process. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Next is State Representative Lon Burnham. Lon, come on forward. Just so that we can hear the record, for the record, go ahead and tell us who you are and where you reside.
Good morning, Judge. I'm Lon Burnham. I live at 2103 6th Avenue, and I'm here this morning on behalf of paper ballots. I will admit some ignorance about where you are in the process, but I will tell you on Friday, finishing up my first year on the Elections Committee of the Texas House of Representatives, I spent from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. with most of the witnesses talking about the sanctity of the ballot and the concerns that have arisen in recent years about whether or not my vote is being counted. So y'all are all paying attention. I don't think I can tell you anything that you don't already know. There's a lot of suspicion out in the general public as to whether or not we are doing an adequate job conducting our elections. I will say on behalf of Steve Rayburn, I've had a wonderful experience with his providing technical assistance to me on a regular basis on this committee. We just happen to disagree on this particular occasion about a particular nuance about how to get where we all want to go. You may not have time to implement this recommendation for the primary process, but I think it's an imperative and file legislation to mandate the availability of paper ballots statewide. So rather than my getting away with putting an unfunded mandate on you, I'm coming to you asking you to do the right thing. And the right thing is to move in the direction of having paper ballots available during that early voting process. I talked to hundreds of people who refuse to do what I do, which is vote on the first day of early voting, because they don't believe that they can trust that the ballot's going to be counted. We need to treat that early voting period exactly the same way as we do what I refer to as the last day to vote. And the only way we are going to rebuild the confidence in our election system is if we move to a system where there is a paper ballot, or at minimum a paper trail for all votes cast. I found myself in agreement with some of the specifics that Stephanie spoke to, but if you're going to talk about a Justice Department concern, well, there's a much larger concern that paper ballots are available on the last day to vote, but it's not available on all of those other days to vote. So while I'm not familiar with the particulars of where you are in your process, and I'm certainly reminded that my first day to vote will be February 19th, I want to urge you to move in this direction. I think it's a really important direction. And like I said, I enjoy working with Steve. He's been very helpful over the last year that I've been on Elections Committee. But sometimes it's somebody that's in an office to implement major concern, not to change things. In your office is to make sure that people feel like that we are being accountable and making the system work. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make comment at this time?
I do.
Yeah, she does too.
If you go back and fill out one of the audience participation forms.
Can I ask, there's some people here that I think that I should have recognized them here, that they're not speaking, but they did want to be, just be showing that they're in support of this. Could I ask them just to stand real quick?
That would be fine, sir.
They didn't want to speak to those people that were here. I neglected to ask them to stand at that time. I just want to let you know that there were other supporters here that didn't necessarily fell out of silence.
And if anyone really is compelled to speak, if you'll go and fill out one of the audience participation forms, we'll be glad to let you have that opportunity. In the meantime, I think Commissioner Brooks is going to make some comments. So go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe that voting is the most important responsibility of American citizenship. And the protection of the voting franchise is perhaps the most important responsibility of government. It's the government's responsibility to discern correctly the intention of each voter who casts a ballot, and to ensure that that ballot, once cast, is counted correctly and preserved for recounting should the need arise. But once again, the federal and state governments have failed us. They have failed to protect our voting publics by failing to issue guidelines and standards for voting systems which provide a reliable, verifiable paper trail. Consequently, many Americans, indeed many citizens of Tarrant County, have lost faith in electronic voting systems and will vote only by paper ballot. This is not a problem for those who are able to wait until election day to vote, because paper ballots are available at every polling place on election day. But to not make the same opportunity available during the early voting process, in effect, disenfranchises those who, for whatever reason, cannot or will not vote on election day. This freedom to choose the time and place at which one casts their vote is why we have the early voting process in the first place. As I said earlier, The feds and the state have abdicated their responsibilities, so once again it falls to us, the representatives of local government, to do what is necessary to protect our people and our democracy. Arguments against making paper ballots available in one early voting site in each Commissioner's Court precinct have centered upon the cost and upon the logistics for getting it done, of printing all of the ballot permutations necessary to make the system work. As to the cost is cheap when compared to the cost of cleaning up the fallout of a failed election because of catastrophic failure of our current all-electronic voting system. So far, we've been lucky. Such a catastrophic failure has never happened before, anywhere in America that we know of. But it can happen, anywhere, any place, any time. After all, these machines are programmed and maintained by human beings, and anyone can make a mistake that may lead to catastrophic failure. What's the old programming expression? Garbage in, garbage out. Additionally, and by way of providing a comparable analogy, the conventional wisdom was that a terrorist attack could never take place on American soil until it actually happened the very first time. Now we are all incredibly aware of our vulnerability as a nation. We should be equally aware of the vulnerability of our electronic voting systems and act as local officials to do what is within our power as local officials, to do what the feds and the state have not done to protect our voters. As to the logistics of printing and storing these paper ballots, Steve Rayburn, our elections administrator, assured me yesterday that if this court acts today, that while his task will be incredibly difficult, it is not impossible. This is not a Democratic issue, and it's not a Republican issue. It's an American issue. And I urge this court to act to protect our voters.
Do we have some other audience participations at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. Also, members of the court, there was one audience participation that asked not to comment, but they did file a letter and asked that we include it in our records.
Okay.
This is the one that has attached. I'll make copies available to the clerk.
Okay, the two that I have had presented to me, one is Mary Fulbright. Would she please come forward at this time and go ahead and give your name and address, and thank you for coming forward and participating today.
Good morning. I'm Mary Fulbright, 6632 Normandy, Fort Worth, 76112. Keep you just a second. We have courageous men and women fighting and dying to give other people the right to vote. Casting the ballot is just the first part. It's got to be counted. And we have to know that it's counted. And we have to know that nothing can happen that would remove huge numbers of ballots from that count. Within the last 2 years, I went to do a transaction at my bank, a huge bank that has done business electronically for years and years. I had to wait 3 hours because the computer was down. With a paper ballot, you know, the electronic scan ballot, I can vote with that ballot as quickly as I can with the electronic machine. And when it is counted, there's that paper ballot there. And we can count them. No matter what would happen, if lightning strikes in one place, we may lose a few hundred ballots, but it is not possible. It is not feasible that thousands of votes would either be changed through some error in the computer or conceivably through somebody who wanted to manipulate the vote. It could be changed to anybody, you all. It's too precious a gift, and it's too fundamental to our democracy to take a chance. Please, please give us the right to vote on a paper ballot. Texans have never waited for the federal government and for the state to give us directions, you all. Come on, let's in Fort Worth, another first, let's do what's right. And thank you very much for your day-to-day work. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fulbright. Next is Doreen Geiger.
My name is Doreen Geiger. I reside at 6413 Chancery Place, Fort Worth 76116. First, I want to thank very much this court, the Democratic Party, Stephanie Click with the Republican Party, for really so seriously looking at this issue, but most especially for the wonderful people at the Elections Office who have worked so well in trying to address the needs of those of us who feel very strongly that all voters should be able to vote on paper. One of the reasons that we are asking this is in the March election, there's going to be a need for about 1,500 workers at the polls, and in November, there's going to be the need for about 2,200 workers. Many of the people who are here today as guests in this court are people like me who are willing and able to work the elections, and we have done so in the past. But we believe very strongly in only voting on paper. And because of staffing needs on election day, we don't always get to vote to work the election in our own precinct. When I've worked elections, I'm usually very far away from my precinct, serving as an election judge where they did not have one. For us, we have to end up choosing. Are we going to do our civic duty and work elections, or are we going to refuse to work elections so that we can go to our home precinct and cast a paper ballot? And some of us are not old enough yet to qualify to get the ballot by mail option. My question and only question to you today is, with half of the voters in Tarrant County, on average now, half casting their votes electronically, and only half on paper, how will this court handle the issue of declaring final election results when recounts are needed or requested? Because there is no way to do a recount on electronic votes. In audits that have been done in other states, sometimes as many as 20% of the votes have not been able to be counted. And that has occurred for three primary reasons. First, retrieval reasons. There are still some 5,000 votes in New Mexico they've never been able to get out of the machines or document from the 06 election. There's still 8,000 in Florida that they haven't been able to account for. They know those people came in and signed on the poll sheets. They know they voted, but they have never been able to retrieve those votes, even when the manufacturers of the companies have tried to retrieve them. Not only voter retrieval and the hardware problems of just a simple machine down, but software problems, programming errors, even if they're just very innocent errors. But when you have half of the votes all cast electronically, and there is no way to do a recount of that group, that one half of those votes, what will happen in November when a candidate files for a recount and the county can't do it? You can't really have a recount unless you can count all the votes. And the numbers that I have read from audit reports around the country range anywhere from only 80 to 90% of those votes being able to even be retrieved and actually counted, even in those counties that are using the paper trail, like the little cash register roll. Some of that ink is not really staying on the paper well enough for them to do the count. It's the thermal paper. Some of it gets paper jammed. So my issue is, how do you actually document the final results accurately if there's a recount requested? Thank you so much for your consideration of this issue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rayburn, would you please kind of go over the recount, some of the questions that she just had posed?
Yes, sir. The E-Slate has storage of the votes in what's called ballot images, and we do have the capability of printing those off after Election Day. We've actually conducted a number of recounts over the years with those ballot. We print out the votes from the E-Slates and use those for a recount, and that is what's provided for in the election code in recounting those votes. We've done that several times.
And what is the reconciliation process that goes through making sure that there were no ballots that were lost?
Well, we've never lost a vote on the E-Slate. I mean, the votes are printed out. We have audit procedures to make sure that they're all accounted for. Even on election night, since the problem we had in the 2006 primary where we reported some incorrect results, which, by the way, was not due to any machine problem. It was an operator error in our office during the tabulation process. But ever since that time, or since my arrival, we've had this audit process on election night to make sure that if a polling place tells me on their paperwork that 400 people voted, I make sure that I'm reporting 400 votes on election night. So, we've got some very tight controls on that.
Other questions or comments? Or?
Well, I'm having problems understanding how this is going to benefit the voters in the other 25 boxes. You're going to have paper ballots. The request is paper ballots in 6, but that's 6 out of 31 voting locations.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Many voters would have to travel to that location if they desired to vote on a paper ballot.
Or wait until election day.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the cost to the county for us doing that?
Well, in the primary, the state reimburses the parties for the cost of ballots. All other early voting costs are borne by the county. Labor costs, the cost to procure file cabinets, things like that would be borne by us. However, if we do this in the primary, it sets a precedence going forward that I think voters would expect in elections down the road. I don't believe your average voter understands the difference between a party election and a city or school board election and the general election, which is conducted by the county. So I think that, the county would have to bear 100% of the cost when we do this in November. And cities and school boards would have cost for providing this in May if the demand is there to do this in a May election.
Your Honor, would you recognize me for a motion?
Certainly.
I move that this court direct the elections administrator to set up a system where there will be 6 early voting sites where people can cast their ballot by paper ballot. Essentially, is option 1.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion dies for a lack of a second. Any other action?
These people came here this morning, spent their time to come downtown to witness a vote.
And
I think we owe them a vote.
I will agree with that, and I'm going to second it so that we can vote.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. The motion fails 3-1.
In the alternative, I ask that the county administrator prepare for consideration by this court, when we have all 5 members present, a resolution expressing the will of this court that the Secretary of State's office get up off of its collective duff and make the approvals that are necessary to put into effect a verifiable paper trail for casting votes with the e-slate machine in Tarrant County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming this morning.
I do want to also thank you all for coming out this morning. Art, again, I want to thank you for the work you've done the last several years, and congratulate you on that, and appreciate the work that you have done, and like you said, in working with Steve in the past. Stephanie, also want to thank you for coming out today and being a part of this process. State Representative Burnham, thank you very much for being here today. Ms. Glenn?
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our second and final item, we're asking the court to approve the American Fidelity Assurance Company renewal application for reinsurance coverage for 2008. We visited with the court earlier this year and had some discussion about stop-loss coverage for this year for 2008. This document is simply a follow-up to that item and then cements, of course, our coverage for 2008.
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
You noted that, right? Okay. Bill Stevens, I guess, is going to be coming and speaking to us this morning from Public Health. Welcome, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. I'm the Advanced Practice Center Manager at Tarrant County Public Health.
I'm sorry, would you repeat the advanced what?
The Advanced Practice Center.
Thank you.
And I'm here this morning requesting approval of an educational support services and training contract with the University of North Texas Health Sciences Center, the Biomedical Communications Group. And this is for specifically the development of a training tool that we are trying to develop under our APC grant. It is an APC grant deliverable, Advanced Practice Center grant deliverable. And it's specifically for the purpose of training public health personnel, as well as hospital and as healthcare providers around the region on the proper use of the advanced surveillance system that we have that's been in operation here for the last 3 or 4 years, and how they can use this tool to get early warning as well as other types of information about infectious disease outbreaks around the region. So if you have any other questions about this training tool, I'd be happy to answer them. It is a CD-ROM as well as an online training tool. And the expertise that's there in the Biomedical Communications Center we have used before for similar types of development.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Your Honor, I might take a moment now that we're on public health just to recognize our Director of Public Health, Lou Brewer. She has recently been elected as chairperson for the Healthy Tarrant County Coalition, which is a collaborative.
Congratulations.
Mr. Beecham, come on down.
Mr. Beecham, how many trees did it take to print that directory?
Your directory, about 30, I believe, or 31.
I'll share that with the other court members after.
Good morning. We have 5 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-059, submitted for the sale of recycled paper. Our recommendation would be awarded to the high bidder on a per unit price basis. Selecting as that bidder Smurfit Stone out of Keller, Texas, bidding $220 a ton for mixed ledger, $110 a ton for cardboard.
Move approval. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is another bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-049. This is a bid for the of our service awards and retirement watches. That recommendation would be to award to the low bidder, J. Brandt Company, on a per unit price basis. Last year's expenditures were a little over $27,000.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our item number 3 is another bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-037. This is our annual contract for equipment rentals for use by all precincts. Should be to award to the primary, secondary, alternate, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth alternate bidders based on rental rates, delivery charges, and discount from the price list.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our item number 4 is another bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-048. This is a bid for the purchase of server technology cabinet distribution units. The recommendation would be to award to Micro Age, the amount of $4,900.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last item is also a bid award recommendation for RFP number 2008-040. This is an RFP for intensive community-based program for juvenile services. That recommendation would be to award to Santa Fe Adolescent Services, the amount of $156,900. We're also seeking contract approval from the court if approved.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, we have a couple of interlocal agreements. Commissioner Brooks.
I would move approval, Your Honor, of items 8L1 A and B and 8L2 A and B.
We have a motion
And I'll second.
and a second to approve items 8L.
That's 8 or 9?
Well, it's
Well, it depends
9.
on which one you're looking at, I think.
So it's 9L1
9L.
A and B.
Was there a second?
Yes. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously, and I'll move approval of items 9L2 A and B.
And I can include it
He
in.
did.
It was.
We've already done it.
Ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Yes, sir.
Keep right on trucking. Are there any appointments today?
Yes, I have an appointment, and I don't see it here, and I don't know how to do this. It's to appoint the person that needs to be from precinct 2 on your access committee.
Okay.
Under 9, various board appointments.
Okay. It would be Dr. Gilbert Ledesma. He is a family practitioner in Arlington.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have several items to bring to the court this morning. The first concerns the Texas Cooperative Extension Annual Report and the name change to Texas AgriLife. Dr. Jacobson is here to address the court at this time.
Thank you.
don't forget to report my friend's promotion while you're at it.
I'm going to do that. But Judge and Commissioners, I appreciate this opportunity to come before you to share with you some highlights from our annual report and also about our new name change. Our new name is Texas AgriLife Extension Service with a focus on extension, which has been consistent with us. The Texas A&M University System Board of Regents and the Texas A&M University at College Station and the College of Agriculture participated in marketing studies. They had marketing studies done, and they determined that AgriLife was a better fit for extension and research. And so thus our name is changed to AgriLife Extension.
Can I say that I'm underwhelmed?
Yeah.
But our name has changed, but our mission and our commitment are the same, remain the same as they've always been. We'll be providing the same level of service, the same faculty, staffing, same programming that we've done in the past. And also I'd like to present to you some things within the annual report, and I'd like to present Irma Perez, who's a member of our Leadership Advisory Board. She'd please stand. Appreciate her being here today to support us. We have the 4-H Centennial that's going on now, started in September '07 and will continue through August '08, and we're very excited about that. A lot of things in 4-H have remained the same over the past 100 years. We have a focus on service, and last year our 4-Hers contributed, the youth contributed nearly 2,800 hours of community service, so that's something that's continued on in our legacy. Some things are different, too. Our projects have changed some over the years, and our photography project is very popular, and the photographs that you'll see in the calendar were actually done by 4-H youth.
I was just going to comment to you how pretty I think this is.
They're very impressive. I was very proud of them. We're also honored to count as 4-H alumni Commissioner Johnson and Mr. Manius, so you know the program does good things.
Well.
I'd like to draw your attention.
He's underwhelmed again.
I'd like to draw your attention now to the inside of the back cover where it gives our participation for last year. And it shows that our program participation nearly mirrors the demographics of the county. And so I think that that reflects the commitment of our faculty and our staff and our volunteers in serving all segments of our community. The numbers are important, but what really matters is the people. And you'll see as you read through the report that our extension programs really are making a difference in people's lives. And I really like this quote from Paul Romer, an economist, that says, "The only form of capital with infinite human return is human capital." So it's a good investment, and I appreciate your investment in the people of Tarrant County. And we do have some exciting news about this young man. You probably remember Hurley Miller, who was our 4-H agent for several years and then moved on to Harris County as the county extension director. And effective September 2nd, he's been named the district extension administrator for the Northeast Texas region. So he is my new boss.
You trained him well.
I don't know about that, but we're very, very proud of him and excited about his future.
Excellent individual. I really do appreciate him.
Yes, he is. He's outstanding. And he's begun his PhD program, so in a couple of years we'll get to refer to him as Dr. Hurley Miller. So we're very, very proud of him.
We do expect to see him in Tarrant County.
Don't you think he needs to come to court? He's going to be located in Plano, in the district office there.
Bless his heart.
Yep. And he's very young to
It'd
have
be
such an
easier for him to
opportunity.
come from Austin than to come from Plano.
That's true. But I do appreciate your support and commitment to Extension and everything that you provide for us and how you take such good care of us. I really appreciate that. And I'd like to thank Mr. Jim Duff for his development and artwork for the calendar this year, and our team at County Graphics for printing the calendar. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions? No, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.
Don't forget the Junior Livestock Show, March the 8th.
That's right. That's right. We'll be back.
And Jim Duff needs to be complimented. He's one of the finest graphic artists.
Did a good job.
It does a great job.
Building.
Now you're underwhelmed.
Mr. Beecham. Uh-oh. You ain't got any hog stuff in that deal, have you?
Not live. This is a different kind of a briefing than you normally receive. We're actually not asking for money. We're going to bring you some money and ask you how to help us spend it.
Well, I could help you with any time.
Back about in August of 2007, we received, and this box is full of $36,950 worth of debit cards, all different colors and brands. And we received this box of debit cards from the District Attorney's Office in August of 2007. Just a brief history. In 2004, pursuant to Article 1818 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, County Court at Law Number 4 awarded the District Attorney's Office quite a bit of property, seized property that was confiscated by law enforcement for illegal gambling activities. Article 1818 of the Criminal Code of Procedure allows this money to be awarded to the county as a whole, and as opposed to a specific law enforcement agency. Since the forfeiture is a legal award to the county has control of the monies. However, we must follow Chapter 262 of the Texas Local Government Code, which is the Purchasing Act, to help in the expenditure of those funds. We contacted several departments and trying to think outside the box. We spoke with Juvenile Services.
Outside the box you've got right there?
Outside this box, yes, sir. Juvenile Services, Human Services, Facilities, HR, Jury Services, and the Health Department. The opportunity we have is to, with the court's guidance and direction, to give those monies potentially to departments for items that they need to spend. They're outside of the box, they're outside of normal budget processes. Some of the things that we thought about, there's a list, there's a spreadsheet I think is attached to your court communique. 17 different companies were contacted. At this point in time, I'd like to acknowledge one of our staff members, Sheree Souther, if I can ask her to stand at the back of the room. She is the lady in our office that helped make this happen. She was tenacious. She would not accept no for an answer. Some of these cards have been deactivated since 2003. She was gracefully forceful to help them see things our way and reactivate these cards, and she did an excellent job, spent a lot of time on the telephone, and half of these cards were deactivated and not usable to the county. There was only one company, that being TGI Fridays, that chose not to listen to what she had to tell them to reactivate those cards. So we have various denominations. We spent some time talking with Renee Tittle's office, Craig Maxwell, Ron Bertell, Ray Reich has been involved. We have different denominations of cards. Some of the things that we thought about, if you'll see the restaurant cards are included, we immediately felt like that a potential expenditure for those cards might be to use for jury services for sequestered juries. Be something that they could use. We spend the money right now. In contacting the various departments, we receive suggestions. There are cards to, Home Depot, to Sears. When we renovate this particular building for common areas, it was our thought that for common areas, we purchase refrigerators, ice makers, things of that nature that could be used to offset the cost for this renovation. We get requests from the health department. We pay for check requests constantly for dry ice, for things that they use for inoculations. There's just many things we could use the funding for. I saw the Albertsons cards. If the court chose to wait, we could certainly come turkey time next year, buy a bunch of turkeys. Just
it conjures up all kinds of
it does.
Yes.
Put them all in the box.
Target Juvenile Services have processes. There are mobile gas cards. We talked to Gerald Smith. He had to leave. We are still helping people get back to LSU, to Louisiana, and those gas cards are viable. There are Kmart's, I think 13 Kmart's in the state of Louisiana that would be viable for those purchases. So we're just asking this morning for guidance in how you wish us to disperse these cards. We also have, I guess, the largest denomination. There's $12,600 of American Express gift checks.
Mr. B.
I'm sorry, but neither of us understand.
We don't understand how
we came by the
we
card.
came by the card.
If I'm guessing,
how we came by the right.
I'm guessing that we've
to
got
the funds represented by the card.
The sheriff may have had a raid on an 8-liner location, and or someone that may have come out of a.
Say I go into an 8-liner location and I get arrested. Is the county entitled to max out every credit card I've got in my pocket?
No.
Well, what is this?
These are debit cards.
I don't understand this.
I don't know what a debit card is, I guess.
Gift card. It's a gift card.
Well, that makes sense to me, but why did we have them?
They were awarded us by CC number 4.
If it's CC number 4, that'd be County Criminal Court number 4, probably?
Yes, sir.
That's correct. So I'm just, again, guessing, and maybe we've got somebody from the Sheriff's Department to talk about it, but the whole purpose on these 8-liners are that they give something, and that's where we cross the line, and my guess is you're looking at what they get as a reward of.
It's instead of money, they gave them a card.
Gave gift cards.
Yeah, and
These monies were not taken from. These were not patrons' money. These monies were owned by the people that were running illegal operations, and it was a seizure. It was a seizure.
Okay, well that makes sense.
That makes a lot more sense.
I think somebody needs to come up with a small committee, because throwing that up here to us is opening Pandora's.
Well,
and
for us to spend
what
money.
I will tell you, what we wanted to do today was simply to make you aware that this occurred and the monies would be available, and we would like to come back with some recommendations to the court as far as expenditures. But you can imagine what happened if we would come back to the court with the expenditures without telling you how we got the money. So that's what the purpose of today's presentation is.
I think that's a great approach to take on that deal, and if we could find some way to get a check or somebody to buy those things from us, it would be even better.
Okay, well, help me understand, what did your employee have to do to
Most of these cards were deactivated as long as June of 2003. We
What
just
does
got
that mean,
these.
though?
She had to call and convince the companies that they needed to reactivate those cards. They were null and void.
They expired.
Expired. They were no good.
And so, in effect, what we're just saying is and that's the other reason. If we could find somebody who would be, maybe even the companies, they're probably not going to be willing to buy them back. But if we could find somebody who was, and I think it's Human Services or something.
These places that have 8-liners want to buy them back.
Now, Commissioner, I'm not going to go there.
well, like with the credit card or the debit cards at Kroger and Albertsons, it seems like those could be given rather than food.
Randy Turner had situations throughout the year, the purchase of clothing for indigent youth on probation within the community, purchase of school supplies. We just felt like that we would.
Okay. Well, I'm beginning to get it now, but I didn't understand what.
And there, I think and again, this is forfeiture money.
Yes.
In effect, it would have come through the Sheriff's Department, I'm assuming, probably, or wherever it came. But I think if we can look toward that list, hopefully we could use it to offset our budget as opposed to creating new.
Every department that we contact obviously would like to have the cards, and so that's why we felt like we want to bring back, besides, not the DA, but the departments that we contacted, though.
Judge's office really.
But all but one company made these cards good, is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
That's, took a tremendous amount of time.
And
She
who
didn't,
was it that didn't?
TGI Fridays.
Fridays.
Sounds like we need to talk with Fridays next time you want to think about going in there to,
I think it's
although I see her raising her hand back there. Has Fridays changed their mind?
I'm sorry, TGI Fridays did renew. It was Foot Locker. Lady Foot Locker.
Excuse me.
Okay.
No shoes.
You know, we don't want to boycott a place and find out that it was the wrong place to boycott. And I think boycotting ladies' Foot Locker is probably a good, all right
Yeah,
thing
I
to
have
do.
no problem doing
It's a
that.
great idea to appoint a committee to come back with recommendations. Since these things are not cash and are probably not convertible to cash, we may not be able to help our budget with them, but we can do a lot of things.
We'll put a list together and bring it back to the court, but what we wanted to do was simply to make you aware of this,
Thank you
because
very
it was
much.
It's
a substantial.
$39,000,
$36,950.
Thank you very much.
One more question. How much was in this Lady Foot Locker thing that?
Not much. It was minimal. Very minimal.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. All right, anything else?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
And again, please note that we're going to close.
Right.
One other thing I want to announce. Today is Judge Vandergrift's birthday. And I'm going to try to get a card, if we don't already have one, over at my office. And if you would like to sign a happy birthday card, we'll see if we can't get that sent to him today. And it'll be a little late, but by the time he gets it, but we'll go ahead and take care of that. So
He's 82 today.
How old?
82.
JD, you're closing in on him. You know, I just knew that, I just remembered the
Closer
time.
than I was.
I just remembered when Dion was here, and I knew she'd want to make a comment about that, and I thought I'd just,
Thank you, Glenn.
I think it's time for that gavel.
The court will now recess from open session and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempted under sections 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code.
That's the latest word.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, we'll reopen the session. And
Thank you, Your Honor. Item D1, we're requesting the additional amount of $7,500 for outside counsel fees for Lee Christie Jr. with it to come from self-insurance fund with regard to defending county employees in this case.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion to second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, that's all we have.
All right. Thank y'all very much.
You're here.
And you're adjourning in honor of.